In our previous video, we were graphing equations from a new form of a line. And we didn't really talk about a whole lot what this new form was. We were really just practicing rearranging it into slope-intercept form and then graphing. Today, we're going to talk more about what that new form is. Now, what this new form is used for is it's used to write the equation of a line. Now, you were doing this at the end of your last assignment, where I would give you a line like this, and I would ask you what the equation was. And if you remember, there's basically two questions that you need to answer. You need to figure out what is the slope of that line. And you also need to figure out what is the y-intercept of this line that you are trying to write. And so the second part of this equation that we want to figure out is the y-intercept. So looking at this line, what is the slope? Okay, the slope would be rise over run. And so if we go from -4, this point here at -4 to this point right here, we would have to go up 1, 2, 3, and so the rise would be 3, and we go over 1, and so the slope would be 3 over 1, or just 3. What's the y-intercept of this line? Okay, the y-intercept of this line is -4, and so we would think of that also as the ordered pair 0, -4. But now that we know the slope and the y-intercept, we can write the equation, because remember, the equation in slope-intercept form always looks like this. It's y is equal to whatever the slope is times x plus whatever the y-intercept is. So in this particular problem, we know that the slope is 3 and the y-intercept is -4. So our equation would just be y is equal to 3x minus 4. So we've been doing that for a while now. We've been writing equations given this graph. Okay, we want to get to the point, though, where we can write these equations without a graph. Now, before we get to that, I want to remind you of this problem. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done this problem, but again, I would give you a point and I'd give you a slope and I'd ask you what's the equation. And the way you did that is you graphed it. And so the first thing you did was you found the point -4, 2. Okay, so let's find the point -4, 2. Okay, -4, 2 means we go over to -4 and we go up to 2 and we put a dot. Okay, now how would you draw a line from that point that has a slope of 1/2? Which of these things would you do? Okay, you would go up 1 and you would go over 2. And so those 2 points, we can connect those together with a line. And now what we want to do is like what we just did on the last screen, we want to write the equation of this line. So what's the slope of this line that we just graphed? Well, it's 1/2. That was part of what was given to us in the question. What's the y-intercept? The y-intercept is 4, because that's where it crosses the y-axis at, is right here at 4. And so then what would our equation be? Well, the equation would be y equals 1/2 x plus 4, because remember, the slope is the number that goes in front of the x, the other number is the y-intercept. But let's see if we can do the same problem without making the graph. That's what we want to get to today. So we don't have to draw the graph first. We can just automatically come up with the equation. To do that, we're going to use this new form that you were working with the other day. Okay, it's called point slope form, and it always looks like this. It says y minus y1 is equal to m times, in parentheses, x minus x1. Now, this x1 and y1, that's your point. Okay, so you're going to fill in this part right here and this part right here with whatever the point is. M in this equation, that stands for the slope. And so you're going to fill that part in right there with the slope. And then we've got the equations like we saw when we were doing our graphs in the last lesson. Okay, so let's take this same information we just had and let's use this point slope form to write the equation. Okay, so we're going to start with a y. We're going to fill in something next to this y. Okay, then we're going to put an equal sign. We're going to fill in the slope in this blank. And then in these parentheses, we're going to fill in something next to the x. So there's basically 3 spaces we need to fill in. So next to the y, we're going to put in, since this says minus y1, we're going to put in the opposite of whatever the y value is. So in this case, remember, -4 is the x, 2 is the y. So since 2 is the y, we're going to put in -2 next to this y. The slope is what goes in this next blank. The slope is the 1/2. And then next to the x, we're going to put in minus whatever the x point was. And so in this case, it'd be minus -4. But instead of putting minus -4, we put plus 4. And so basically what we're going to put next to the y and what we're going to put next to the x is the opposite of our ordered pair. So in our ordered pair, we had negative 4, 2. Next to the y, we put minus 2. Next to the x, we put positive 4. And then the slope goes in front of the parentheses. And so we're going to fill in those parts of that equation to come up with this equation. Now, once it's in that form, we could rearrange it into slope-intercept form, and we would get the same answer that we just had on the last screen. But today, what we're going to do is just practice filling in the spots of this. So the first thing you're going to be seeing on your My Open Math assignment today is you're just going to be trying to match up the correct equation with the information. So let's just see if we can figure this out. We've got the slope -8, and it passes to the point 92. Now remember, your equation looks like this. It's y minus y1 is equal to the slope times x minus x1. Okay, you may want to write that down somewhere so you'll have it to look at when you're doing your assignment. So whatever the y value is, we're going to put down the opposite next to the y. So it'd be y, and then instead of writing down 2, we write down minus 2. Okay, then we're going to write down the equal sign. Okay, then we're going to fill in this blank in front of the parentheses with whatever the slope is. So what's the slope in this problem? Okay, it's -8, so we're going to put a -8 in that blank. Okay, then it's going to be parenthesis x, and next to this x, we're going to write down the opposite, whatever the x value was. So what's the opposite of the x value in this problem? Well, the x value is 9, so when we write down the opposite, we would write down -9. And so that's going to be y minus 2 equals -8 times x minus 9. So which one of those answers matches that? Okay, that would be this first answer up here. So that's the one that we would click on our assignment. It matches what we just said there. So you're going to have some problems where you're just matching up this equation with the correct one over there. Okay, then you're going to have some next set of problems where you're going to have to go just a little bit farther. Okay, so here we've kind of got the blanks that we need to fill in. It says slope 7 passes through the point 42. So remember, that slope goes in front of the parentheses. So we're going to take the slope, and it's always going to go in front of these parentheses. So we're going to fill in that box with a 7. And then remember, this first number is x and the second number is y. So the number with that's x goes next to the x, and the number that's y goes next to the y. And so we would just fill in those boxes. And so you're going to have several problems like that where you're just putting numbers in the right spot. So remember, the y goes next to the y, the x goes next to the x, and the slope goes in front of the parentheses. Okay, then we're going to step that up one more level from that and ask you to not only fill in those numbers, but then to make sure you have the right symbols in here as far as plus or minus. So let's do like we just did in the last problem. Okay, remember, the slope goes in front of the parentheses. So in which one of these boxes, we'll call them A, B, and C, in which one of these boxes are you going to put the -8/5? Okay, it goes in front of the parentheses, so it's going to go in box B here. Okay, is the 16 going to go next to the x or next to the y? Okay, it's going to go next to the x because it's the x, which means the 4 has to go next to the y. Now remember, it's always the opposite of these is what sign we want. So when these drop down boxes, you're going to have a choice of either picking a plus or a minus. Since this was a positive 16, you're going to pick a minus in this box. And it's the same thing with the 4. Since this is a positive 4, you would pick a minus out of that box. Now, if one of those happened to be a negative, of course, you would pick the plus sign. So you're always going to pick the opposite of whatever those numbers are. And then the last thing that you're going to do is you're going to just have to write the whole equation. And so here we go again. We've got the 0.52 and the slope -5. So you're going to type into this box, next to the y, what number are you going to put down? Okay, your 2 is the y, but you want to write down the opposite of that, so you want to write down -2. Okay, in front of the parentheses, what number are you going to write? Okay, you're going to put the -5. And then in the parentheses next to the x, what number would you write down? Okay, you're going to put a -5 because the x is 5, but remember, you write down the opposite. You don't have to simplify that. That's just going to be your answer. And so those are what all the problems are going to look like on your assignment today. So you can kind of see you're building up. The first ones, you're just matching the right equation. The next one, you're just putting them in the right blanks. The next last set that we just looked at, you not only had to put them in the right blanks, but you had to pick the right signs. And then in these last few problems, you're just going to have to write the whole equation down. So that's what you're going to be working on today. Hopefully that makes sense to you. If not, make sure you reach out with email or with Canvas, and I will try to get back with you and help you. If not, good luck. And that's all I've got for you today.